Part 1 Ion stood outside the small music center, like he did almost every evening. The building was not fancy. It was old, with faded paint and windows that rattled whenever the wind blew too strongly. But to him, it was the most magical place in the whole town. Every time the door opened and someone came out, he listened to the little pieces of melodies that floated out behind them. Just those moments were enough to fill him with hope. Inside the center stood the one thing he dreamed about more than anything else in the world, the piano. It was not a brand new shiny one. It had scratches, the color had faded on some parts, and one of the legs had a small crack. But to Ion, it was perfect. He imagined touching it, pressing the keys gently, making his own music even if only for a few minutes. He pressed his ear against the cold window glass, trying to catch the sound of someone practicing inside. Today, a young girl was trying to play a simple tune. Her notes were slow, sometimes uneven, but they meant everything to him. He watched her hands move across the keys, trying to memorize every finger movement so he could practice them later on his homemade cardboard piano. Ion took a deep breath. He knew he had to try again. Maybe today someone would listen. Maybe today they would allow him to touch the piano, even for just a second. He gathered his courage, walked to the entrance, and pushed the door open slowly. The air inside felt different, warm and filled with the scent of old books, polished wood, and a faint smell of warm tea. A few people were sitting around, waiting for their turns. The instructor, a strict man with tired eyes, stood next to the piano giving instructions to a student. Ion waited until there was a small break, and then stepped forward. "Sir," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper, "can I touch the piano?" "Just once. I won't take long." "Just 1 minute." The instructor looked at him, not unkindly, but with the same expression he had given him many times before. "You again?" he said. "This is not a place for playing around. These students pay for lessons. The piano is not a toy. Go home." Ion lowered his eyes. He knew the answer, but he still hoped that one day it would change. The instructor turned back to the student, and Ion quietly stepped aside so he wouldn't disturb anyone. He stayed inside for a few minutes anyway, standing near the wall, watching the lessons. He watched every small detail, the way the instructor moved his hands, the way students corrected mistakes, the way the piano responded when someone pressed the keys too softly or too hard, even without touching it. Ion felt like he was learning something every time he observed them. He believed that if he kept trying, kept watching, one day he would be ready. One day they would see that he wasn't just some boy who wandered inside. He had something real inside him, something that felt like music. But as the minutes passed, some of the students began looking at him with annoyance. One of them whispered loudly, "Why is he here again? He doesn't even learn here." Ion felt the sting of those words, but he stayed silent. He didn't want to cause trouble. He didn't want attention. He just wanted to be near the piano. A woman sitting near the desk noticed him and came over. "You should leave now," she said gently. "You are distracting the students." Ion nodded, understanding. He always tried not to be in anyone's way, but leaving always hurt. It felt like walking away from something that belonged to him, but wasn't his yet. He stepped outside and closed the door behind him. The sun was setting, painting the sky with soft orange and pink colors. He stood there for a moment, watching the shadows of the people moving inside, listening to the faint notes through the window. Then he made his way home. His home was in a narrow lane filled with children running around, neighbors chatting loudly, the smell of food cooking drifting through the air. His house was small, with peeling paint and a tin roof that made loud metallic sounds whenever it rained. But inside it was warm, with soft yellow lights and simple furniture. His mother was sitting near the stove cooking dinner. She looked up as soon as he entered. "You're back? Did they let you try today?" Ayan shook his head. "No, they said I distract the students." His mother gave him a sad smile. She knew how much he wanted to play. She knew how every refusal chipped away a small piece of his heart. But she also knew her son's determination. He never complained, never cried about it. He simply tried again the next day. "One day they will let you," she said softly. "Don't lose hope. Your time will come." Ayan nodded. He believed her, even when it felt impossible. After dinner, he went to his room, a small space with a wooden bed and a few old books stacked against the wall. On the floor sat his most precious creation, a cardboard piano he had built from an old box. He had drawn each key carefully, using old markers he found. The keys didn't move or make sound, but it was enough for him to practice finger movements. He sat down in front of it and placed his fingers on the drawn keys. Closing his eyes, he imagined the sound of a real piano, the way each note would rise and fall like waves. He moved his fingers slowly at first, repeating the melody he heard at the music center earlier in the day. He played it again and again, each time imagining more details, the softness of the keys, the vibration in the air, the warmth of the music filling the room. For a moment, he felt like he was inside that world, a world where he belonged. Hours passed without him noticing. The room grew darker, and the only light came from the small bulb above his bed. His mother peeked inside. "You're still practicing?" She asked .ay and smiled. "I want to be ready. I want to show them I can play." His mother touched his shoulder gently. "You have a gift, my son. Just keep going." After she left, he closed his eyes and imagined walking inside the music center one day and sitting at the piano without anyone stopping him. He imagined playing a melody so beautiful that no one would dare tell him to leave again. The next day, he returned to the music center, standing near the wall, listening to the sounds coming from inside. He watched people walk in and out, all with confidence, all with a place inside. He felt a little invisible, like a shadow no one paid attention to, but he refused to give up. He walked to the door again. He opened it again. He stepped inside again. This time he waited until the instructor took a short break. Ayan swallowed hard, his heartbeat loud in his ears, and walked toward him. Sir. He began timidly. The instructor turned to him, already looking tired. "What is it now?" "Please, just 1 minute. I want to touch the piano. I won't break anything. I won't disturb anyone. I promise." The instructor sighed deeply. "You don't understand," he said. "This place is for students. You can't keep coming here asking for the same thing. There are rules. Go home now." This time the refusal hit harder. The instructor's words felt colder, sharper. Ayan leaned back slightly, feeling a quiet ache inside his chest. He looked down, nodded politely, and stepped away. He didn't cry. He never cried over this. But his heart felt heavier than usual. As he moved toward the door, he heard 2 students whispering behind him. "Why does he keep coming? Can't he see he's not welcome?" Ayan didn't turn around. He kept walking. Outside, he stopped beside the window one more time. He could see the piano clearly from there. He watched the instructor touch the keys to demonstrate a melody. He watched the students play it after him. He wondered what it would feel like to sit there. Even once, he whispered to himself, one day I will sit there. And when I do, I will play something they will never forget." The evening breeze brushed against his face, lifting some of the tiredness away. He stood there for a long time, listening to the music through the glass until the center finally closed for the night. And even though the world had refused him again, something inside him stayed strong, because dreams, he believed, were not meant for the people who got everything easily. They were meant for the ones who kept trying. Even when the door closed again and again, Ayan took a deep breath, stepped away from the window, and walked home with a quiet promise in his heart, a promise that soon, somehow, the piano would hear his touch. Part 2. Ayan woke up before the sun rose, long before the rest of the neighborhood started moving. The world outside his window was still dark, quiet, and peaceful. It was the only time of day when everything felt still enough for him to think clearly. He sat up slowly, rubbing his eyes, and listened to the soft hum of the early morning breeze passing through the small gaps in the window. Framed out his cardboard piano sat on the floor beside his bed, waiting for him like an old friend. The edges were worn now, and some of the drawn keys had faded, but it was still there, still his. He placed his fingers on the flat, silent keys and closed his eyes. In his mind, he heard a real piano. He imagined the soft weight of the keys under his fingertips and the warm notes rising gently around him. He tried to remember every melody he had heard at the music center the day before. It was still painful to think about the way he had been turned away again, but he didn't let that stop him. Today, he told himself, he would practice even harder. His mother knocked softly on the door. "You're up early again," she said with a tired but warm smile. She walked inside with a small cup of tea for him. "You should rest more. You're still young." "I'm fine," Ayan said, smiling back. "I just want to practice before school." She sat on the edge of his bed and watched him for a moment. She admired his dedication, even if she couldn't fully understand his world of music. Their family was simple. Life was simple. Piano lessons, music centers, those were things far outside what they could afford. Yet her son carried a dream bigger than their circumstances. "You're trying so hard," she said softly. "One day someone will notice." Ayan nodded. He hoped so. He needed someone to see past his worn-out clothes in quiet nature. He wanted someone to see the music inside him. After he finished practicing, he put away his cardboard piano, washed up, and headed to school. The streets were busier now. Children ran around, playing games and shouting to their friends. Vendors opened their stalls. The aroma of fresh bread filled the air. School was ordinary. Nothing special happened there for him. He wasn't the top student, nor the funniest, nor the most athletic. He was just quiet Ayan, the boy who doodled pianos in the margins of his notebooks. Some classmates teased him about his invisible piano at home. Others didn't pay attention to him at all, but he never let that bother him much. His mind was always somewhere else, somewhere filled with music. During break time, he sat under a tree with his lunch and watched a group of kids laughing loudly. He smiled to himself and tapped his fingers on his knees, practicing silent scales. The rhythm helped calm him, helped him feel connected to the world he longed to be a part of. When school ended, he walked straight home. He never wasted time when the music center was waiting for him. He knew he couldn't go inside and play the piano, but just being near, it gave him motivation. On the way, he stopped at a small electronics shop where a row of televisions played random shows. He stood outside the window, staring at one screen showing a concert. A man sat at a grand piano, playing with grace and confidence. Ayan watched the man's hands move. Every finger seemed to dance across the keys like it had a life of its own. The music was powerful. Even through the glass and street noise, he felt its strength. He wished he could hear such music live one day. He wished even more that he could create it. The shopkeeper noticed him and chuckled lightly. "You're always staring at that piano video," he said. "You must really love music." Ayan nodded. "I want to learn. I want to play one day." "Dreams take work," the shopkeeper said, not unkindly. "And sometimes luck." Ayan thanked him and continued his walk. He didn't have luck yet, but he had worked lots of it. As he approached the music center, he felt that same flutter of nerves he felt every day. The center was alive with noise students talking, instruments being tuned, and faint melodies floating through the walls. He stood near the window again, pressing his palms against the cool glass. Inside, a boy around his age was practicing the same piece the girl had played yesterday. Ayan watched the instructor guide him, correcting his hand position. He tried to memorize the corrections too. Every detail mattered. After watching for some time, he walked around the side of the building where the old bench sat. It was worn out, with chipped paint and a wobbly leg. But this was the spot where he often practiced quietly with his fingers in the air. He sat down and began practicing again. A woman passing by stopped and watched him for a moment. "Are you pretending to play?" she asked, surprised. Ayan nodded shyly. "I want to learn. I practice like this every day." The woman smiled gently. "You must really love music." "I do," he said, his voice full of sincerity. She nodded and walked on. But her brief kindness stayed with him. A little later, the cleaner from the music center walked out carrying a bag of trash. He recognized Ayan immediately. "You're back again," the cleaner said with a tired yet amused expression. "Yes," Ayan said. "I just like listening." The cleaner paused. He had noticed the boy many times, always outside, always quiet, always observing. "Don't you ever get tired of waiting for a chance?" he asked. Ayan shook his head. "If I stop waiting, then I stop trying." The cleaner admired his spirit. Most kids his age would have given up long ago. "One day," the cleaner said, "you might get that chance you're waiting for." Ayan smiled. "I hope so." The cleaner went back inside, and Ayan continued practicing his invisible piano. He spent hours like that, completely absorbed in the movements, the rhythms, the invisible music playing in his head. As it grew darker, he watched students leave with their parents. Some carried expensive instrument cases. Others talked excitedly about their progress. He felt a small ache in his heart, knowing he had none of those things. But at the same time, he felt a fire inside him that none of them had. They were learning because their parents could pay. He wanted to learn because he had something deep inside that needed to come out. When the music center finally quieted down for the night, he walked home slowly. The sky was deep blue now, sprinkled with early stars. He wondered if anyone inside the building even remembered he was there. At home, his father had returned. His clothes were dusty from work, and he looked exhausted. But when he saw Ayan, he gave him a small smile. "How was your day?" he asked. "It was okay." "I practiced more," Ayan said. His father nodded. "You work harder than most grown-ups I know. I'm proud of you." Hearing those words lifted Ayan's spirits immediately. His father didn't always have time to talk about music, but he always supported his son's dreams. After dinner, Ayan returned to his cardboard piano. Today, he tried a new melody he had heard through the window. He didn't know the exact notes, but he tried to recreate them from memory. His mother listened from the doorway. She didn't understand the details, but she could see how his fingers moved with purpose. She could see how much he wanted this. "You really believe you can do it, don't you?" she asked softly. Ayan nodded without looking up. "I know I can. I just need a chance." She leaned against the wall, watching her son, who carried a dream much larger than their little home. She wished she could give him everything he needed. But for now, she could only give him love and encouragement. Hours passed again, and the room grew quiet and dim. The only sound in the house was the gentle tapping of his fingers on cardboard. Before going to bed, he looked out the window toward the direction of the music center. It was too far to see, but he could imagine it, the piano sitting silently inside, waiting for the next day's students. Ayan whispered to himself, "One day you will hear me." For him, The piano wasn't just an instrument. It was a dream, a promise, a future he wanted more than anything. And though he had been refused many times, he knew deep down that he couldn't give up, because sometimes life tested the ones who dreamt the biggest dot, and sometimes those tests were proof that something beautiful was on the way. As he lay down to sleep, he imagined again the feeling of real keys under his fingers. He imagined the sound of music filling a room because of him. And with that vision in his heart, he drifted into sleep, ready to try again tomorrow. Part 3. The next morning arrived with a soft golden light slipping through the cracks in Ayan's window. He woke up slowly, stretching his arms as he sat up in bed. His fingers felt slightly stiff from practicing late into the night, but he didn't mind. It reminded him of the dreams he was chasing. He went through his usual routine, washing his face, eating a simple breakfast, and making sure his cardboard piano keys were not smudged before he left for school. Today felt different somehow. He couldn't explain why, but something inside him felt heavier, yet hopeful. At school, his mind wasn't really present. His teacher's voice drifted in and out of his thoughts, mixing with melodies he had practiced the night before. The blackboard in front of him became a set of piano keys in his imagination. Even the tapping of pencils from his classmates felt like rhythms to him. During break, he sat under the same old tree, tapping lightly on his knees. He tried out new combinations of notes in his head, shifting his fingers gently in the air, as if he were touching real keys. A classmate approached him curiously. "What are you always doing with your fingers?" the boy asked. "Just practicing," Ayan replied softly. The boy looked confused. "Practicing what?" Ayan hesitated, then said, "Piano." The boy laughed a little. "But you don't even have a piano." Ayan smiled. "I have music in my head. One day it will be enough." The boy didn't understand, but he shrugged and walked away. Ayan didn't mind. He was used to people not understanding his dream. Not everyone could hear the music he heard. Not everyone could feel the weight of his hope. After school, he rushed home, changed out of his uniform, and hurried toward the music center. He didn't want to miss anything today. Even if he wasn't allowed inside, he wanted to be near the place that made him feel alive. As he reached the building, he noticed something unusual. A poster was taped on the front door. He stepped closer and read it carefully. It said that the center would be hosting a small performance event in 2 weeks. Students would play for their families and neighbors. Ayan's heart fluttered. A performance meant rehearsals. Rehearsals meant new music. And new music meant more things for him to learn just by listening. He stepped back and looked through the window. The piano was being cleaned by the same cleaner from before. The cleaner saw him and smiled, then waved. Ayan waved back shyly. After a few minutes, the cleaner stepped outside with a bucket and cloth. "You're early today," he said. "I wanted to see the poster," Ayan replied softly. "There's going to be a performance." "Yes," the cleaner nodded. "Lots of students will be playing. The place will be full." Then he paused and looked at Ayan more closely. "You'll be watching from outside again?" Ayan shrugged gently. "I don't mind. I can still listen." The cleaner gave him a sad but warm smile. "You have a brave heart. Most kids your age would have quit by now." Ayan looked down at his hands. "I can't quit. I feel like the music is waiting for me." The cleaner didn't know what to say. He had never met a child with such quiet determination. Ayan sat on the old bench beside the music center and practiced with his fingers again. Today, the melodies inside the building were louder. Students were preparing pieces for the performance, so their practice sessions were longer and more serious. He listened carefully, memorizing every mistake, every correction the instructor made. He imagined himself sitting at the piano, his fingers moving with confidence. At one point, He closed his eyes and let the music guide his breathing. He didn't even realize that a small crowd of children walking by stopped to watch him. They whispered to each other, wondering why he moved his fingers like that. But Ayan didn't notice. He was too lost in the world he wished he belonged to. After some time, hunger reminded him of reality. His stomach growled softly. He looked around. There was a bakery nearby. The smell of freshly baked bread drifted toward him, warm and tempting. He didn't have money to buy anything today, but he liked standing outside the shop just to smell the food. The bakery lady noticed him and smiled politely. She often saw him standing there. Long day? She asked. Ya nodded. Just listening to music? She handed him a small piece of leftover bread wrapped in paper. Here, take this. It's from the morning batch. Thank you, Ayan said, his eyes lighting up. He always appreciated small acts of kindness. It made him feel like he wasn't invisible. He sat by the bench again, eating the bread slowly while listening to more music from inside. As the day grew older, the sun began to sink behind the buildings, casting long shadows along the street. Around late evening, he made a bold decision. Maybe it was the warm bread, or maybe it was the sound of a student playing a beautiful melody wrong for the 5th time. He didn't know what exactly pushed him, but he felt something rise inside him. He stood up, walked to the entrance of the music center, and gently pushed open the door. The instructor was fixing some sheet music at the far end of the room. Ayan took a deep breath. Sir? He whispered. The instructor turned slowly, immediately recognizing the soft voice. You again? He asked with a sigh. Ayan nodded nervously. I know you're busy. I know I'm not a student here. But can I please touch the piano today? Just once? I won't play it. I just want to feel the keys under my fingers. The room went silent. A few students nearby turned their heads to watch. The instructor looked at him with a mixture of irritation and pity. How many times must I tell you? This piano is for our students. You don't understand how things work here. Ayan swallowed hard. I want to understand. I want to learn. But you don't belong here, the instructor said bluntly. This place is not for children who walk in from the street. Please leave. The words hit Ayan like a cold splash of water. His throat tightened. He lowered his gaze and stepped back. He didn't say anything. He didn't argue. He didn't cry. He simply walked out. But this time, something in him cracked a small, fragile piece of his hope. He stood outside, staring at the piano through the window. His hands trembled slightly. He wanted to run home, but his legs felt too heavy. So he stood still. The night breeze touched his face gently, as if trying to comfort him. Suddenly, someone stepped outside. It was the cleaner. I heard what happened, the cleaner said softly. Ayan didn't look up. It's okay. I'm used to it. No, the cleaner said. It's not okay. You have a dream. You deserve a chance. Ayan shook his head. Maybe they're right. Maybe this place isn't for someone like me. The cleaner crouched next to him. Listen, some people get chances easily. Others have to fight for every piece of hope they get. You're one of the fighters. And fighters don't give up because of one tough day. Ayan breathed slowly, trying to calm the ache inside him. The cleaner looked around to make sure no one was watching. Then he whispered, Come inside later. After everyone leaves. I'll show you the piano. You can touch the keys. Just for a minute. Ayan's heart almost stopped. Really? But you must be quiet, the cleaner warned. And careful. Ayan nodded quickly. I will. I promise. The cleaner returned inside, leaving Ayan with a spark of hope that warmed his chest like a small flame. He waited outside patiently as the last students left. The lights inside dimmed slowly. The instructor finally walked out, locking the front door and heading home. When the street was calm, the cleaner appeared at the side entrance and waved for Ayan to come. Ayan stepped inside, his heart pounding so loudly he felt it might echo in the empty room. The piano stood in the corner, silent and beautiful. Ayan walked toward it slowly, almost afraid it might vanish if he got too close. He reached out his hand, but just before his fingers touched the keys, the main entrance door swung open. The instructor stepped in. His voice echoed angrily. "What is going on here?" Part 4 content will be written here in 1,700 words of simple, natural, human-centric storytelling, without headings and without restricted names. He started the next morning with a quiet kind of resolve, the kind that grows slowly overnight when the mind has had time to settle, breathe, and decide what matters. The sun was barely up when he stepped outside, but the cool air felt good on his face. He walked down the small path toward the town center, not rushing, not dragging his feet either. It was as though his body understood that this day would be important, even before he consciously admitted it. He kept thinking about the old music teacher who had stopped to watch him the previous evening. The man had not said anything, but his eyes had softened, and in that moment, something inside him had shifted. It wasn't approval or praise. He had learned not to expect those. It was simply acknowledgement, and that alone was powerful. When he reached the center of town, the early morning workers were just opening their shops. Some nodded at him, others didn't notice him at all. He didn't mind. His eyes were already focused on the music hall, in the distance, the place he had loved from afar for so long. To others, it was just a building with polished doors and shiny windows. To him, it was a world he had only ever entered in dreams. He reached the front steps much sooner than he expected. He stood there for a long moment, looking at the wide doors that were still closed. He felt his heartbeat rising, but he took a slow breath and reminded himself, one step at a time. Just one. Before he could lift a hand to knock, the same music teacher from yesterday appeared at the side entrance, carrying a small leather bag. The man stopped again when he saw him. He recognized that look. The teacher hadn't expected him to return, but he wasn't surprised either. "You're here early," the teacher finally said. He nodded. "I wanted to come before things got busy." The teacher studied him, as though looking for something in his expression: hesitation, fear, or maybe boldness. After a moment, the man simply motioned with his head. "Come with me." He followed him around the building, toward a smaller door that led into a side corridor. He had never seen this entrance before. Maybe only staff used it. Inside, the hallway smelled faintly of old paper and powdered polish. The walls were lined with framed photographs, musicians, conductors, old groups of students. He didn't recognize anyone, but each face seemed full of pride. "This place opens later in the morning," the teacher said as he kept walking, "but there are things I come early to check." "You wanted to play again, didn't you?" He swallowed and answered quietly, "Yes, if it's allowed." The teacher didn't answer directly. Instead, he stopped in front of a door that looked heavier than the others. He opened it and stepped aside so the boy could look inside. It was not the same small practice room he had been in last time. This one was larger, brighter, and warmer. Sunlight came through the tall window, and there it was, right in the middle, the same piano he had touched the night before, the one that had seemed too beautiful for him. "You can sit," the teacher said. He hesitated, but he walked toward the piano. His fingers hovered above the keys again, almost afraid. He could feel the teacher watching him. Not judging, just watching. "What you played yesterday," the teacher said after a moment. "Did you learn it from somewhere?" He shook his head. "No, I just tried to play what I felt." The teacher raised an eyebrow. "You play by ear?" He wasn't sure what that meant exactly, but he nodded. The teacher let out a slow breath. Try again. Play something. Anything you want. His hands trembled, but he placed them gently on the keys. The familiar chill of the polished surface ran through him. He closed his eyes for just 1 second, remembering the feeling of last night, the hush between notes, the way each sound seemed to reflect his own thoughts. And then he began to play at first. His fingers moved slowly, unsure, almost shy. But the sound that came out was clear, clean. He followed the notes that formed in his head, not thinking too much, just letting the feelings move through his fingertips. The melody rose, then softened, and rose again. It was not perfect. It was not loud. But it was honest. The teacher listened without interruption. When he finished, the man walked closer and stood beside him. How often have you played piano? He asked quietly. He looked down. Not often. Mostly when someone left one unlocked somewhere. The teacher's eyes darkened with a kind of sadness mixed with understanding. So no one taught you? He shook his head again. The teacher didn't speak for a while, as though trying to process what he had just heard and witnessed. Then he walked to the window, opened it slightly, and let the fresh air in. You have something rare, he said. Something people try for years to learn, but they never quite reach. He didn't know what to say. Praise always made him uncomfortable, mostly because he never knew if he deserved it. The teacher turned back to him. But talent is only the beginning. It is not enough by itself. It needs direction, structure, guidance. Otherwise, it burns out too fast. He felt something tightening in his chest. He wasn't sure if it was hope or fear. Come back tomorrow morning, the teacher said. Same time. I want to see how far you can go. He nodded, but did not move from his seat. His fingers still rested lightly on the piano keys, as though letting go would break something fragile. You can play for a few minutes, the teacher added, before stepping out. I trust you. Those words hit him harder than anything else. I trust you. He couldn't remember the last time someone had said that to him. When the teacher left the room and closed the door behind him, the space suddenly felt larger, quieter. The morning sun warmed the side of his face. He lifted his hands and began to play again, not scared, not hesitant, but with a freedom he had never felt. He didn't know how long he played. It could have been 10 minutes or an hour. Time didn't matter when the music took over. Each sound echoed softly through the room. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He was simply letting his heart speak. When he finally stopped, he sat still for a long moment, breathing deeply, feeling something peaceful settle inside him. He knew one thing for certain. He wanted to come back. Not just tomorrow, but every day if he was allowed. When he stepped out of the building, the town had brightened. People filled the streets. He walked slowly, replaying everything in his mind. The teacher's words, the music, the way the piano had felt under his hands. He reached home feeling lighter, almost taller, as if something invisible had lifted off him. His small room felt the same as always, but he felt different. He touched the edge of his bed and smiled without meaning to. For the rest of the day, he couldn't stop thinking about the next morning. He imagined the room, the sunlight, the sound of the piano. He wondered what the teacher would ask him to play next time. He wondered if he would be good enough. Later in the evening, as he walked through the quiet streets, he saw a few kids playing music on their phones. He paused, listening closely. He tried to follow the notes in his mind, imagining how he would play them on the piano. The kids saw him watching, but they didn't say anything. They kept laughing among themselves. He continued walking, humming softly, letting the melody grow inside him. That night, he slept lightly. Not from worry, but from excitement. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the piano again, glowing in the morning light, The next day, he woke up even earlier. He washed his face, put on his cleanest shirt, and walked quickly toward the music hall. He didn't want to be late. When he reached the side door, the teacher was already waiting. This time, the man smiled faintly. "Good, you came back." He nodded. "You told me to." "I did," the teacher said. "And today, we begin properly." Part 5 content will be written here in 1,700 words of simple, natural, human-centric storytelling without headings and without restricted names. He arrived at the music hall earlier than ever the next morning, long before the town had fully awakened. The streets were still soft with silence, and the sky carried a pale blue light that had not yet warmed into day. He walked quickly but calmly, feeling a mix of nerves and excitement twisting inside him. Each time he thought about the teacher's words today, "We begin properly," he felt something flutter in his chest. He reached the side door and paused for a moment, steadying his breath. He didn't want to walk in looking restless, even though he felt it. He pushed the door gently and stepped into the quiet hallway. The teacher was already there, placing a stack of music sheets on a small table. The moment the teacher saw him, he nodded with a calm approval. "Good morning," the teacher said. He returned the greeting softly. The teacher picked up a thin booklet from the stack and handed it to him. "This is the beginning. These are basics that every musician must learn, even prodigies, even those with gifts." He took the booklet carefully, as though it were something delicate. The pages were filled with lines and small symbols he didn't fully understand. The teacher saw his confusion. "You've played beautifully without knowing how to read these. But one day, that limit will stop you, and I don't want that to happen to you." He listened quietly, letting every word sink into him. "Come," the teacher said, guiding him into the same bright room as before. The piano sat waiting in the morning sunlight, polished and still. He walked toward it with the same mixture of reverence and relief he felt each time he saw it. He sat down slowly. "I want you to play something first," the teacher said, standing near the window. "Something from yesterday. Anything that comes naturally." He nodded and placed his fingers on the keys. The moment his skin touched them, his thoughts began to settle. He closed his eyes briefly, letting the memory of yesterday's melodies come back to him. Then he played a soft, thoughtful tune that rose gently, spread through the room, and faded like the quiet morning light. When he finished, the teacher smiled faintly. "Good. Your instinct is strong. Now let's shape it." The teacher pulled a small stool and sat beside him, placing one finger on the page in the booklet. "These lines are the roadmap. The symbols tell you where to go, how long to stay, when to hold on, when to let go. Music is freedom, yes, but even freedom has a language." He listened carefully. The lesson began slowly. The teacher explained things one at a time, what the symbols meant, how notes were placed, how they translated to keys. At first, it seemed complicated. The shapes felt foreign, the rules unfamiliar. He frowned without realizing it, trying to match what he saw on the page to what he heard in his head. The teacher noticed. "Don't worry. Everyone feels lost in the beginning. You're not behind. You're just starting another chapter." That helped. He relaxed a little. After a few minutes, the teacher asked him to try playing the simplest line of notes from the page. He tried. The sound was uneven, nothing like what he usually played by instinct. He winced at the disharmony. The teacher chuckled softly. "Reading feels awkward at first, but trust the process. Your fingers are learning a new path." He tried again and again. After several attempts, the notes began to fall in place, slightly crooked, but clearer. "Good," the teacher said. "Your mind is adjusting." The lesson went on for more than an hour. By the end of it, he felt both tired and proud. It was the kind of tired that comes from effort that means something. Before he left, the teacher gave him one more piece of advice. Don't rush. Don't try to jump ahead. Master each step. And remember, you bring emotion to the piano. I will help you bring structure. He nodded gratefully. He left the music hall feeling different again, not just inspired, but focused. The world around him looked sharper, as if every corner carried new possibility. He spent the whole afternoon practicing the notes in the booklet. He didn't have a piano at home, but he used his fingers on the surface of his table, tapping imaginary keys. At first, the soundless practice felt odd, but after a while, it helped him remember the shapes. Every now and then, he hummed the melodies he wanted to play. He imagined how they would sound with real notes. He imagined the teacher listening with that patient, steady expression. Toward the evening, he walked near the old community center where someone occasionally left a damaged keyboard outside. Today, it was there, resting on a bench. A few keys didn't work, and some were out of tune, but he didn't care. He sat and practiced the simple notes from the booklet. Some kids nearby watched him, whispering quietly, but he was too focused to pay attention. When he finally stood up, his fingers were sore, but his heart felt full. The next day, the routine continued. He reached the hall early. The teacher was always there ahead of him, as if he knew that nothing mattered more to the boy than these mornings. Slowly, day by day, the lessons grew more complex. The teacher taught him scales, finger placement, how to move smoothly from one note to another. Some days, his progress was fast. Other days, he struggled, and the frustration made his shoulders tense. But even during those moments, the teacher never raised his voice or pushed him harshly. He guided him with calmness. There is no need for fear here, the teacher would say. Music is patience. He repeated those words to himself often. One morning, after nearly 2 weeks of steady practice, the teacher surprised him. Instead of handing him the booklet, the man placed a single sheet of music on the stand. This, the teacher said slowly, is your first real piece. The boy stared at the page. The notes seemed like a forest dense, busy, almost intimidating. I don't know if I can do this, he whispered. Yes, you can, the teacher said. Not today. Not tomorrow. But eventually, yes. They spent the entire lesson going through only the first few lines. The teacher guided his fingers, corrected his posture, taught him how to breathe with the rhythm. It was difficult, but something about the challenge excited him. When the lesson ended, the teacher placed a hand gently on the piano. You've grown. I can see it. You listen. You try. You come with sincerity. That is why you will go far. He felt warmth in his chest. Hearing that thought over the next week, he practiced the piece every moment he could. At first, he played only the right-hand notes, letting them grow familiar. Then he slowly brought in the left hand. Sometimes the two hands collided or confused each other. But he didn't give up. One afternoon, while practicing on the broken keyboard near the community center, an older woman stopped to listen. She didn't interrupt, she simply listened. When he finished, she clapped softly. You play beautifully, she said. He flushed with embarrassment, but thanked her quietly. Something inside him was changing. Slowly, steadily, he was starting to believe that he belonged at the piano not as a visitor, not as someone borrowing time, but as someone who had earned a place. One morning, when he walked into the music hall, the teacher stood beside the piano with an expression he couldn't quite read. Today, the teacher said, I want you to play the piece from beginning to end. Don't worry about mistakes. Just feel it. His hands trembled slightly as he sat down. He took a slow breath and placed his fingers on the keys. The first notes were shaky. Then the next came smoother. Slowly, the music began to take shape. He felt his hands moving together, guiding each other. The melody rose, settled, then rose again. It was not perfect. His timing slipped once, and a few notes were too soft, but he kept going. When he finished the final chord, he lowered his hands and looked up. The teacher was staring at him, not with surprise, but with something deeper, something like pride. "You did well," the teacher said softly. "Very well." Those words stayed with him long after the lesson ended. Later that day, as he walked through town, he felt more grounded than ever. People around him carried on with their routines, unaware of the journey he was on. But he didn't need them to know. For the first time in his life, he had something that belonged to him, a path, a purpose. That evening, while sitting outside and practicing the finger movements silently, he wondered what the next step would be. He wondered how far he could go if he kept learning, kept trying, kept believing. He had no idea what the teacher was planning for him. Next, he had no idea how big the next step would be, but he was ready. Or as ready as he could be, and for now, that was enough. Part 6 content will be written here in 1,700 words of simple, natural, human-centric storytelling, without headings and without restricted names. He didn't know why the teacher had asked him to arrive even earlier than usual that morning, but he didn't question it. The moment he woke, there was a quiet excitement inside him, the kind that made the world seem softer and brighter. He washed his face quickly, put on the same clean shirt he had worn the last time something important happened, and stepped outside. The sky was still dark blue when he walked through the silent streets. Only a few shopkeepers were beginning to open their shutters. The cool air felt sharp on his skin, but he liked it. It kept him awake, aware. When he reached the side door of the music hall, the lights inside were already on. That was unusual. The teacher never turned them on this early, unless something was happening. He knocked gently. The door opened almost immediately, and the teacher stepped aside to let him enter. "Good. You're on time," the teacher said quietly. He nodded, unsure why the teacher's voice sounded more serious than usual. They walked down the familiar hallway, past the photos, past the practice rooms, past the little table where the teacher always kept his music sheets. Instead of turning toward the smaller room they always used, the teacher continued walking. He frowned slightly. "Are we not practicing today?" "We are," the teacher answered, "but not in the usual room." He followed silently until they reached the main hall, the place where real performances were held. The door to it was open, and when he stepped inside, he froze. The hall looked different in the morning. Empty rows of seats stretched out like quiet waves. Sunlight came through the high windows, turning the polished floor into a warm golden reflection. And in the middle of the stage, a piano. But not the usual one. This one was larger, grander, almost glowing. He stared at it, unable to move. The teacher walked to the center of the hall and looked up at the stage. "Come," he said softly. The boy climbed the steps slowly, each movement careful, almost reverent. When he reached the top, he stood in front of the piano, stunned by how beautiful it looked. The teacher joined him. "This is the concert piano," the teacher explained. "Only used for events, never for practice." The boy swallowed. "Why am I here?" The teacher's expression softened. "Because you're ready." His heart tightened. "Ready for what?" The teacher turned to face him fully. "Tonight, there is a small gathering here. Not a big event. Just a group of musicians and teachers from other towns. They come to listen, observe, and sometimes discover new talent." The boy felt his breath catch. I don't think you're not performing for a crowd," the teacher said gently. "Not officially, but I want you to play for them. Just one piece. Something simple. I want them to hear what I heard the first time I listened to you." His hands began to tremble. "What if I make mistakes?" "You will," the teacher replied calmly. Everyone does. But mistakes don't matter as much as sincerity. The boy looked down at the stage floor. I'm scared. Good, the teacher said. Being scared means you care. The boy let out a shaky breath. Sit, the teacher said. He obeyed, lowering himself onto the bench. His fingers hovered above the keys, but didn't touch them yet. This piano will feel different, the teacher added. The keys are heavier. The sound is richer. But the heart playing it is the same. The boy finally placed his hands on the keys. Immediately, he felt it, the deeper weight, the slower resistance. He pressed a key softly. The note that filled the hall was warm, strong, and full. His chest tightened again, but this time with awe. Play something familiar, the teacher said. He nodded and began one of the simpler pieces he had practiced during the week. The music echoed beautifully, filling the empty hall. It felt almost unreal. The teacher listened without interrupting. When the boy finished, the teacher spoke softly. You have grown faster than I expected. You don't understand how rare that is. The boy kept his eyes on the piano. I'm still learning. Yes, the teacher agreed. And you will always be. But now, I want to teach you something different. The boy looked up. Tonight, the teacher said, you will not read from a sheet. You will not play something rehearsed. The boy blinked in confusion. Then what will I play? The same thing you played the very first time I heard you, the teacher said. Play what you feel. The boy shook his head quickly as panic rose in him. I can't do that in front of others. That was just something inside me. I don't think I can. The teacher raised a hand. You can. But listen to me, the teacher said, his voice suddenly firm. Music that comes from the heart is stronger than anything written on paper. It is the truest form of expression. And it is the reason I chose you. The boy stared at him. The teacher lowered his voice again. When others hear you, they will not just hear notes. They will hear sincerity. And that is rare. The boy swallowed hard. Fear still curled inside him, but something else began to grow beneath it, trust. Let's practice, the teacher said. They spent the rest of the morning working on confidence, not on technique. The teacher walked around the hall, listening from different angles. He corrected posture, breathing, and pace. He asked the boy to close his eyes and play. Then he asked him to open his eyes and play again. He guided him gently, never rushing. By midday, the boy felt exhausted, but something had shifted. The fear was still there, but it no longer controlled him. You will be fine tonight, the teacher said. The boy nodded slowly. Go home, rest, and come back before sunset. He followed the instructions. Though resting was difficult, his thoughts raced from fear to hope and back again. He tried to distract himself by walking around town. He bought a small snack from a street vendor, but barely tasted it. Every sound he heard: car horns, passing conversations. Distant music felt sharper than usual. When the sun began to dip, painting the sky in soft pink and orange, he returned to the music hall. This time, the outside wasn't quiet. Several people stood near the entrance, talking softly. They looked like musicians. Some carried instruments. Others wore neat clothing. And a few had the calm confidence of teachers. The boy froze for a moment. But then the teacher appeared at the door and waved him inside. You're here, the teacher said, relieved. The boy nodded. It's crowded. Yes, but they're not here to judge you. They're here for music. And you will give them that. The boy breathed deeply and followed him. Backstage, the noise faded. The teacher straightened the boy's shirt gently, like someone preparing a young performer. You'll play after the third performer, the teacher explained. Just one piece. Nothing long. The boy felt his heartbeat speeding up. The teacher placed both hands on his shoulders. Remember, don't think about them. Think about the piano. Think about the sound. Think about that first moment you played in the small room. That is who you are." The boy nodded. A soft announcement sounded from the hall. The event had begun. The boy could hear the first performer start, a violinist with clear, sharp notes. He sat on a small bench backstage, listening, breathing slowly. His hands stayed clasped together to stop the shaking. The second performer played the flute, gentle, flowing. Then, after a few minutes of silence, the third performer started. When the music ended, the teacher came to him. "It's time." The boy felt his legs weaken, but he stood. The teacher walked beside him until they reached the side of the stage. When the announcer called his name, the boy stepped into the light. The hall was dim but full. Dozens of eyes looked at him. His breath caught for a moment, but then he saw the teacher standing at the edge. Nodding gently, he walked slowly to the piano, sat down, and placed his hands on the keys. The hall went silent. He closed his eyes and he played. The first notes were quiet, trembling like his heartbeat. But then the melody grew. He let the emotions guide him, the fear, the hope, the long mornings of practice, the nights spent imagining music, the trust he had found. The sound filled the hall, soft at first, then warm, then powerful. He didn't play perfectly, but he played honestly. When the last note faded, the hall remained silent for a moment, as if everyone needed time to breathe. Then, softly at first, people began to clap. The boy lifted his head. Stunned. The applause grew. He looked to the side. The teacher stood in the shadow of the stage, eyes shining with quiet pride. The boy stood, bowed awkwardly, and stepped back toward the wings. When he reached the teacher, the man placed a hand on his shoulder. "Well done," he whispered. The boy's eyes stung slightly, though he didn't know why. As they walked out of the hall together, the teacher stopped him. "There were several people who asked about you," he said casually. "They want to know your story. They want to know if you will keep learning." The boy blinked in surprise. "People noticed me?" "Yes," the teacher replied. "And this is only the beginning." The boy looked down at his hands, the same hands that once trembled just asking to touch a piano. They had played on a stage. He smiled softly. He didn't know where music would take him next, but he knew one thing for certain. As long as he had a piano, he would keep playing. And the world, for the first time, was finally listening.